So, what I want to teach you today is that when essayists revise their essays, they pause every time that they have introduced some evidence from the text, pushing themselves to explain exactly what that evidence means and how it relates to the ideas they're discussing. They can make sure they do this well by using a little logic. So, to help you be this kind of writer, I want to give you a quick lesson in logic because this might help you find places in your essays that need a little clarifying. At its most basic, logic is about drawing a conclusion that no one can really argue against. Here is a classic example of a logical argument. All humans die. Socrates is a human. Therefore, Socrates will die. It's simple in a way. It's almost like you add two ideas together to make a third idea. But logic gets really sloppy sometimes, especially in matters of the heart. Take my niece and her friend. You can see his attempted logic. She is really nice to me. I like her. Therefore, she likes me. But do you see how this doesn't actually work? The first two ideas do not actually add up to the third. We all know that just because someone is nice to you doesn't mean they like you romantically. Today, you are going to be on the lookout for places where you make a lot of assumptions and where what you mean is not clear or what people would call logical. Let's see how we can use logic to help make our essay stronger. I'll show you one from my essay on All Summer and Day. It's a revision to that paragraph I crossed out a few days ago. I have been working on it since then, but still think it's not as strong as it could be. I'm going to read it, and I want you to give it the logic test. First, ask yourselves what I'm trying to argue. Then, look to see if I've made that connection clear. Because Margot is so caught up in her own pain, she hurts others. Margot is even partly to blame for the jealousy the children feel. For example, she does not look at them or talk to them during recess. She actually refuses to speak to another kid when he talks to her. And she won't play any of their games. If they tagged her and ran, she stood blinking after them and did not follow. When the class sang songs about happiness and life and games, her lips barely moved. She is really unfriendly here. Okay, can you take a moment and help me out? Give this the logic test. Start by asking yourself, what are the ideas that I need to provide evidence for? It seems like what I'm saying is that the children are jealous of Margot, and it is Margot who is partly to blame for this. So one question is, did I choose evidence that can be seen to show that Margot is to blame for the children's jealousy? The second question is, did I actually spell out the way that that evidence shows that logically? That is, did I use language to spell out the way that the evidence makes the point? If I didn't do this, where is it that I dropped the ball? Or could you say that my logic fell apart? These are two important questions in your notebook for when you reflect on your work. Pause the video and take a second to think about these answers in your writing notebook. Okay, so I know what it is that I am missing. I see that I did not explain myself logically or clearly. Is that what you came up with? So now I still need to do the work of actually explaining myself. Of course, I can just start writing if I think I know how to clarify my thinking, but if I get stuck, I can also try out some sentence stems, fill in the blank templates that will kind of force my brain to do the work I need to do. Here are a couple of frames you could use today to match with what you might be trying to do. Let me try each of these. So the first one, someone who tells you the truth is a good friend because a part of friendship is being honest even when it's difficult. Here's an example of the next one. If being deceptive means that you don't tell someone the truth, but instead go behind their back, then she is deceptive because she says she will keep a secret, but then tells the world. And now the last one. Being a good cat owner takes responsibility. And I am a good cat owner. Therefore, I am responsible. Let me try one of these out on my body paragraph. So instead of saying she is really unfriendly, I'll try the third frame, this frame. So in this section, what I say causes Margot to be partly to blame for the kids' jealousy is that she keeps herself apart from the other kids. That's what my evidence says. So I have to ask myself, does it logically make sense to say Margot keeps to herself and does not interact with the other children? Therefore, she is partly to blame for their jealousy. What do you think? Either yes, this makes total sense, it is totally logical, or no, there's something off here. It's not logical yet. Now we want to think why. Why is it logical or not logical? You might be thinking that it's logical because it says that Margot sets herself apart and makes the other kids feel weird around her. So she is partly to blame because she is the one who doesn't get along with everyone. But what about an argument for why it might not be logical? So maybe the part about her setting herself apart doesn't really connect to the idea of jealousy. Maybe if you're trying to show that she made them mad or made them think she was odd, but we're trying to show her part in the jealousy thing. And maybe you're not seeing how she set herself apart shows that she caused the kids to be jealous of her. So my thinking is not logical quite yet. I'm going to need a little more evidence and a little more thinking to be sure that I'm crystal clear in my thinking and my logic. For example, I could add some more evidence that shows how Margot contributes to the other kids being jealous, like that she keeps talking about the sun, something the other kids have never seen. Let me see if putting this thinking into my sentence frame helps me do a better job clarifying what I think logically. So now I could write, Margot keeps herself apart from the other children, and she keeps talking about the sun, something the other children have never seen. Therefore, she is partly to blame for their jealousy, because she almost flaunts what they want most in their face, while never getting to know them. What do you think about that sentence? Yes, I think this is better. So now I'm going to need to go back to my original paragraph and be sure I set this up. I've mentioned evidence in this line that isn't in my original paragraph. If I rewrite, it could sound different. Because Margot is so caught up in her own pain, she hurts others. Margot is even partly to blame for the jealousy the children feel. For example, Margot keeps mentioning her experience with the sun in front of the other children. She writes poems about the sun. She keeps telling stories of what it feels like. Also, Margot does not look at the other children or talk to them during recess. She actually refuses to speak to another kid when he talks to her. And she won't play any of their games. If they tagged her and ran, she stood blinking after them and did not follow. When the class sang songs about happiness and life and games, her lips barely moved. Margot keeps herself apart from the other children, and she keeps talking about the sun, something the other children have never seen. Therefore, she is partly to blame for their jealousy, because she almost flaunts what they want most in their face, while never getting to know them. Do you see what we did to my piece? First, we looked for the places where it felt like I hadn't clarified my thinking, places where my logic slipped. Then, we used sentence frames to work on clarifying how my evidence supports the thinking of that section. Finally, we went back to see if there was anything I needed to add or revise in that section now that we had clarified my thinking. Now it's your turn. Go back to the lesson platform for your next activity.